Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to HISSYFIT. Today we're going to be talking about face palettes, and I feel like around summertime a lot of makeup companies like to release palettes that focus more on a bronzy, glowy look to get you excited for summer and feel nice and pretty and glowy. So the question that I want to ask is it really worth it to spend the money on a high-end product compared to a drugstore palette that could probably give you the same look? We're going to put that theory to the test today and try out two different palettes to see if we can still get a glowy look no matter what brand we use. So the two palettes that I chose are the Becca X Chrissy Teigen Glow Face Palette and the Maybelline New York Master Contour Palette. I got this in the medium to deep color because it's a little bit more comparable to the colors in the Chrissy Teigen palette. Let's just jump right into it. I've already primed my face using the NYX Angel Veil Primer, and let's start off with the high-end option. This is what our Becca X Chrissy Teigen palette looks like. You get a giant mirror inside of it. You get two highlighters, a bronzer, and a blush. Let's start off with our bronzer. Start warming up the skin. I'm using a Makeup Forever 152 wavy brush. I'm taking the bronzer in the palette Malibu Soleil, and I'm just going to use this to warm up my skin. I haven't been tanning lately, so your girl could use it. And since the Maybelline palette says it's more of a contour type palette, I am going to use the bronzer in more of a contouring type situation just to put a little bit of shape in the face and a little bit of warmth around the skin. So this bronzer is much like the full-size Becca bronzer that I've used before. It's smooth, it's blendable. It doesn't put down too much color, which I can appreciate in a bronzer, especially when I want to use a darker one, because if it has too much pigment, I feel like it just muddies up my face and puts too much color down off the bat, and I feel like a bronzer is something that should be buildable. And this one's doing it. I do have to say that I like how this is performing on my skin so far, but we're not finished. We're gonna take the blush in the palette called Hibiscus Bloom. I've got this Real Techniques blush brush. I love this brush. It's so big and floofy, and I just love how it puts on color. Dip it on in, yeah. It is a really pretty fresh corally color. It's got a little bit of a glow to it, which I am on the fence about. Sometimes I like a little bit of a glow, but since this already has highlighters in it too, I don't want my face to be too micro glittered up. But for right now, it looks nice. It's natural, which I like as well. And I really feel like the corally color is so pretty for summertime. And finally, let's test out one of the highlighters. The highlighter in our Maybelline palette tilts more on the gold side, so I'm going to go for more of the goldish bronzer in here. Both of them are a little pink tinted and a little rosy, but I feel like this one, Beach Nectar, has more gold to it than rose gold actually does. So I'm going to take my MAC 224 brush, which is the same one I used in the Too Faced video, and I'm just going to apply it to the high points of my cheeks and all that good stuff. So I'm happy to say that the subtle shimmer in the blush didn't mess with how the highlight went with it. I mean, I feel like if I applied more or something, it would be more of a super duper glowy product. And once again, with highlighters, I kind of teeter on wanting a super glow as compared to a buildable glow. I guess that the theme for this palette specifically is that it's very buildable, which is probably good in the long run, but I'm curious to see how the Maybelline palette is going to compare. So let's hop right into that one. Alright, Maybelline! This is the Master Contour palette in the shade medium to deep. I chose this one because I felt like the colors were a bit more comparable to the Becca palette. You get more of a corally blush as opposed to the pinky ones that they put in. And the Becca bronzer is pretty dark, and this contour shade is pretty dark. It's still a little, I feel like it's a little bit shimmery, which is why I have a hard time calling it a contour shade. There is no mirror, but they do give you this brush, which, let's see, this brush. It's a shitty drugstore makeup brush. The bristles aren't super soft. And honestly, this feels like such a small brush to put with a face palette. Does anybody agree? I mean, I guess you could use this to lay down your contour color, but it's really not going to do any blending. So I'm just going to put this brush off to the side because I'm not going to use it. Let's test this out. I'm going to do the same process as I did with the Chrissy Teigen palette. I'm going to start off with my bronzer with the same brush. I wiped it off. So I didn't necessarily feel like this bronzer color was as creamy as the Becca one, but it still blended out nicely, so I don't really have too many complaints. It did put down a really pretty bronzed color. Now, I know that this is marketed as a contour color, but honestly, I feel like maybe since it's a little bit darker, it does feel like a little bit of a bronzer on me. I probably wouldn't use this shade to contour, to be completely honest. I like cream contours if I'm gonna do my face and stuff, but this is nice. It's blending out nicely, which is what we want. So let's move on to blush. Again, with my Real Techniques blush brush, I'm gonna dip this into the Maybelline brush. Blush, not brush, but blush. You use the brush to dip into the blush. This blush does have a little bit of shimmer to it, but it does not have as much pigmentation as the Becca one off the bat, I'd have to say. I already dipped in a second time, and the subtle sheen in the blush is pretty. I'm not gonna knock it. I do like it. Now that we're blushed up, we're gonna move on to highlighter. Here she is. Oh wow. I am impressed with how glowy this highlighter is already with applying it. I kind of expected I would have to dip in again because when I picked it up on my brush, it just didn't seem too shimmery. But on the skin, it's actually a lot more shimmery, which I can appreciate for sure. I feel like this is a universal highlight shade too. Like, even though this palette is marketed with like medium to deep skin tones, I still feel like someone that's as pale as me can use it, which is pretty cool. It's just all about your blending and how you use it. And now with both palettes applied to my face, let's take a look and digest these feelings that we're having. Honestly, my face feels very cohesive. It doesn't feel like I'm wearing two different palettes on my face, which I think is pretty cool. I'm gonna just take the leap and I'm gonna say that if you want to achieve a summer glow, you really don't have to spend a lot of money on it. I know there's a lot of fancy summer palettes coming out, and this is definitely the one that I paid the most attention to. It felt like the summer palette, but after messing around with this, I've received the exact same result, in my opinion. I don't know if maybe on camera looking at me it feels different, but in person, I'm feeling glowy, I'm feeling bronzy. I don't think that this isn't worth the money. I'm just saying that you can get the same thing for less than half the price. So in the battle of the palettes, does the $46 palette knock out the $12.99 palette? I wouldn't say so. I really wouldn't say so. I think that at this point, if we're trying to disprove high-end products against drugstore, this thing did the same exact job that this thing did. It's just a matter of formulations, an extra highlighter in this one palette. This is going to be a personal preference. These both gave me the same glowy summer look that I was going for, so if you want to splurge on a nice luxury palette, I think that it's worth it. And if you want to save money, I think that it's still worth it. I think that they both gave me pretty nice color, nice pigmentation, nice blendability. You can do the same thing with this palette as you can do with this palette. So it's just up to if you want to splurge on a nice fancy product or if you just want to go and get a basic face palette. They're pretty much going to do the same thing. So that just about does it for today's video. Take this information however you may and do what you want with your summer glow. Either one of these palettes is going to give you a great result. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Comment down below what other products you'd be interested in us checking out. We love drugstore and we love high-end. Let's put them to the test. This was very surprising for me. I honestly did not expect this outcome to turn out the way it did, but I'm super happy it did. Make sure you like our video so that we know that you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next week in a new video. Olivia, out.